David Gregory, you were in Montreal this week for the Fantasia International Film Festival. Before we go into what you're up to there, I was wondering if you could talk about your history with the festival.
My history with the festival, well, I think the first time that I came here was for the world premiere of Theatre Bizarre, which was an anthology movie we produced with 7 directors. A couple of the episodes were shot here in Montreal. And myself, Richard Stanley, Tom Savini, Doug Buck, Kareem Hussein, Jeremy Kasten, and Buddy Giovinazzo were the directors of the various episodes, and they gave us a big gala premiere, and it was fantastic. And subsequently, before that, I came out here for Birdemic. We had a midnight screening of Birdemic, which was a riot. That's it. I was here when I was editing Lost Soul, the documentary about the island of Dr. Moreau, but it wasn't actually in the festival because it wasn't finished in time.
Very cool. Wow. Birdemic must have hit it off great at Fantasia.
It did. It went down a storm. I mean, a lot of the screenings we did at Birdemic were pretty memorable, but the Fantasia one was terrific.
Great. So you guys put out Hemisphere Horrors back in, what was it, like March it came out, or April, I guess?
Yeah, I think it was February or March, yeah.
Right, okay. So it was tons of fun, and it was a great expansion for fans of the Blood Island collection. And one of the movies that was tons of fun was Brain of Blood. So you're here in Montreal now to do to screen a documentary called Blood and Flesh, which is about the director of Brain of Blood, Al Adamson. So why did you want to focus on this man in particular?
So Al Adamson has had a very varied and interesting career. I mean, he stayed in low-budget exploitation through his entire career. One of the first films that me and my Severin business partner, Carl Daft, rented when we first rented films from the VHS shop was Dracula vs. Frankenstein when we were about 9 years old, and we thought it was fantastic. And I haven't seen it in the intervening years, but when the film became available, I started talking to Sam Sherman, who was Al Adamson's partner, and he owns a lot of the films in Adamson's catalog. And I did an interview with a guy called David Connow, who had written a book called Schlockorama about Al Adamson. And when we started talking, I realized that there was more to this than just a bonus feature on Dracula vs. Frankenstein or one of Al Adamson's films. And, I started digging around and seeing that a lot of these kind of legendary low-budget filmmakers had started with Al Adamson. So I started, contacting people, and people were willing to talk about it. But one of the things that makes this story particularly interesting for the life of a low-budget filmmaker, low-budget exploitation filmmaker, is that it takes a real weird left turn in the last act. Al had essentially retired from movies after his beloved wife and star of many of his movies, Regina Carroll, passed away, and then he kind of became a recluse. But what most people know Al for is the fact that he was murdered, and he was murdered in a particularly lurid and gruesome way that people kind of remember from the mid-'90s. That's probably all they would remember about Al Adamson, people who aren't really into, exploitation film. And so I started digging a bit deeper in that as well. And with the help of my co-producer, Heather Buckley, we were able to find a bunch of the police that were involved in that, the housekeeper, who is his housekeeper at the time, and various other people around that part of his life who weren't remotely involved in the film industry, but could tell a really kind of detailed account of that very kind of strange and sad and tragic ending that Al had.
Wow, that's intense stuff. Wow. We definitely got to check this one out. So another film that you guys are playing is an Indonesian horror film called Satan's Slave. So why was this one appealing for you personally to want to remaster it?
Well, I had seen the remake of Satan's Slave, which I believe played Fantasia a couple of years ago. I'd seen it on Shudder, and I thought it was particularly good, and I didn't realize it was a remake. So when I found out that there was an original, I tracked it down, and I tracked down the owners and took a look at it. And We've never released an Indonesian horror movie before. Oh, and actually, I was actually contacting the owner of it because the same director and writer had made a cannibal movie called Savage Terror or Primitive before this movie, and we've always historically done quite well on Severin with cannibal movies. So we were tracking down the rights to that. So when I saw that this guy, Siswaro Putra, the director, was actually kind of a prolific horror movie director, I started looking at his other work, and Satan's Slave is really kind of the pinnacle of his filmography that I saw. And it is a really unique, creepy ghost story with a lot of incredible imagery in it. So we added that to the package that I licensed from the same company. And when I told Mitch that we're remastering it and putting it out, I guess it fit into one of the sidebars that he's doing at the festival. So he booked it, and we will be showing that on Saturday night.
Well, the people of Montreal are very lucky for that. And also, you will be attending a panel called Returning Life to the Departed, Adventures in Genre Cinema Restoration. And you'll be joined by a couple of your, I don't know if competition is the right word. I feel like you guys in the genre community are all in it together. But Nora Mihana of Arrow Video and Joe Rubin of Vinegar Syndrome will be with you as well. So what are the major challenges with restoration?
Well, the major challenges are usually finding the best, decent, usable elements in order to create a new master, to scan, the negative or an internegative or an interpositive to create something that will be acceptable for a Blu-ray release. Sometimes there is only a print in existence of a given film, so that will be the thing we scan, but that takes extra work for color correction and restoration and stuff like that. But once you have figured out if there are elements available, you need to find the owner of the film, or it could go the other way around. You can find the owner of the film, but they haven't got any elements, such is the case with a couple of Al Adamson's movies, by the way. We're trying to put together a box set of all of Al's works, or most of Al's works, and some of them are just lost. In some cases, even the ones that Sam Sherman owns, he's missing the title sequence of one of the key movies. So we're trying to track down at least a print so we can just put the original title sequence on there and don't have to take it from a tape. There's all kinds of archaeology that goes into finding these films. You mentioned the Blood Island box set earlier. The negative of the Mad Doctor of Blood Island has been missing for years, but we found it at a lab in Paris when we started doing our research, which was great because it's in fantastic condition. The only downside to that was that the title sequence had been cut out and replaced with the less interesting looking French titles. So for that, we had to borrow a print of AGFA, the Genre Archive in Austin, Texas, and they had a print that was very faded and very scratched. So you can tell that there's a difference in quality between the title sequence and the rest of the film, but we matched it as best we could, and it doesn't really affect ultimately the enjoyment of the film because the whole film itself looks fantastic.
All right, and you also have Perdita Durango playing with Javier Bardem, which is really cool. And I'm wondering, how do you see that one fitting into the Severin catalog?
Well, I think it fits perfectly into the Severin catalog. It's a film I've loved since I saw it in the late 90s in Cannes, and it is a very subversive, confrontational, wild movie. It's a sort of prequel to Wild at Heart. I mean, it's part of Barry Gifford's Sailor and Lula series. But the character Perdita Durango is the character that Isabella Rossellini plays in Wild at Heart, but it's played by Rosie Perez in this movie. And Rosie Perez and Javier Bardem are just phenomenal in this movie. And the movie itself is just so crazy. And so I think it's a bit newer than most of the films we put out on Severin, but I was so delighted when it became available because it's a movie that's never been released uncut in the U.S., and we will be releasing it uncut and uncensored, done a full 4K transfer. It looks fantastic.
Well, that's pretty groovy. Wild at Heart is great, and you guys did put out like Santa Sangre, so it does definitely fit into the catalog. All right, now I'm sold.
Oh, indeed, and we're remastering Santa Sangre at the moment in 4K as well, so that will be getting another Blu-ray release later this year for its 30th anniversary.
That's great. Simon Boswell was on my show. He was fantastic. People like that interview a lot. So what advice do you have?
Yeah, we like that one. Simon did the music for Perdita Durango as well.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Oh, that's really cool. Okay, so what advice do you have for first-time filmmakers with films at Fantasia, or really any large festival in general?
Well, I think the idea of taking your film to a festival like this, or one of the genre festivals around the world, is the best kind of stepping stone you can have for a genre film, because not only is it the best arena to see these films because the presentation's amazing, but also you are among fans and filmmakers and producers and everyone who just lives and breathes film. And this is the place to do it. I mean, like I said, when we did Theatre Bizarre, we had the best possible premiere that we could have had. I mean, I think it was better to do it here than maybe one of the bigger, more mainstream festivals, because we were just among people who could appreciate what it was. And I think young genre filmmakers should make the most of having that opportunity.
All right, and how should members of the press conduct themselves at festivals like Fantasia?
How should members of the press conduct themselves?
Yeah, like what's like? How do you like for the press to interact with you? Is there such a thing as being too aggressive or inappropriate in some sort of way?
I don't think so. As long as they appreciate the kind of movies that we're doing and don't come with a kind of too much of a highbrow attitude to the kind of movies that we love, it's something that, as long as you love cinema, I think you're going to enjoy a festival like this.
Good. Okay. Good stuff. So we mentioned the panel, and I'm wondering how well do you get along with the people at Vinegar Syndrome and Arrow Video, and maybe I know you have a relationship with William Lustig. I heard you came up with the name Blue Underground. So how do you get along with those other guys?
I get along with them just fine, and in fact, I work with Joe Rubin at Vinegar Syndrome quite a lot. When he's in Los Angeles, we have a scanner at the office, and he works with me on the scanning work that we do, and often they share elements for films that they may have an element on and that we want to put out more than they want to put out, that kind of thing. And Arrow Video, the same thing. We get along with those guys. We meet them at the various conventions, and we all hang out and discuss the business. So I don't think there's any animosity between those two labels. And Lustig, he's the guy who brought me out here in the first place when he was producing discs for Anchor Bay, because I did a documentary on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which he was in briefly, just as a guy commenting on what it was like to see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre when it first came out. And so we became friendly over that. And it just so happened that Anchor Bay had just picked up the Studio Canal library, one of which was titled The Wicker Man, and just asked me to do a documentary on The Wicker Man. And I came to LA to do post-production on it, and he liked it and said, do you want to continue doing the extras? And it kind of just grew from there.
Yeah, Blue Underground is a great name as well. So congrats on that one.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Blue Velvet and Velvet Underground. It should almost be called Blue Velvet Underground. But anyways,
It could be.
Blue Underground definitely sounds better. I'm just joking around. So what can you say to our audience about the August releases that Severin is putting out? And more generally, what would you say to someone to try to convince them that they should buy Blu-ray? Maybe they're genre fans, but they don't collect. Why should they collect?
Well, I mean, they should collect because we give red carpet editions to these movies. I mean, we give them the full appreciation that they should have. If you're a film fan, you really should be amassing a library of the films that you love. If it's just on a digital file, it's not something tangible. It's something that could disappear if all of a sudden the host that you brought it off loses their rights, or they go out of business or something like that. There are horror stories like that. But on our Blu-rays, not only do you get the superior presentation of the movie, but you get all the special features and the stuff that comes with it. On our August release, Wax Mask, which is the Dario Argento presentation, which was going to be Lucio Fulci's last film, but then he died, so it was taken over by Sergio Stivoletti, the effects artist. We have a full feature-length making-of documentary with Dario and Sergio and various other people who were involved in the production of that movie. It also comes with a remastered CD soundtrack, audio commentary with Sergio, and a bunch of other very interesting extras about the making of this movie. You don't get that when you have a digital library. And the other two films we're bringing out in August are Killer Crocodile 1 and 2. They are directed by Fabrizio De Angelis, who was the producer of Zombie and The Beyond and Emmanuel and the Last Cannibals and a bunch of great exploitation movies in the 80s, Bronx Warriors. And he decided to try his hand at directing later in the 80s, and he made this duo of insane killer crocodile movies decided to make Jaws with a crocodile with no money. And Gianetto De Rossi does the effects. He's the guy who did all the gore in Living Dead at Manchester Morgue and Zombie and High Tension, so he was the man for the job. So those are our August releases.
Fun stuff. Funny story, actually. I was interviewing Claudio Simonetti, and he didn't know who Fabrizio De Angelis was. I thought that was kind of funny.
Claudio Simonetti didn't know who Fabrizio De Angelis was?
Last year. No, he didn't know who he was. And I don't know. You'd have to listen to the interview. But I thought that was definitely funny. And I just wanted to say my package came in today, and I'm very happy about that. I just watched Robo War and some of the features.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Unbelievable.
Have you watched Night Killer yet?
Night Killer is for after this. That's going to be an evening affair, have a couple of drinks and watch Night Killer.
That is the way to go. That movie will literally melt your brain, and you'll be done for after that.
It looks really funny. The comments that Claudio and his wife say are kind of, I'm intrigued. I think we all are.
You should be.
All right, so David Gregory, thank you very much for your time, and enjoy your trip in Montreal. Before I let you go, what are you most excited about to do this week?
I'm actually most excited to show Blood and Flesh to an audience. I mean, we've been working on it for 3.5 years at this point, and I'm very happy with the fact that it's finally all come together, and this is where we're doing the premiere. So I'm very keen to see, how it plays with an audience, and it's very exciting for me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, David.
Thank you very much for having me.